opening across Canada is Martin Sa-Arias, a foreign affairs expert and analyst who is joining us from Frankfurt in Germany. Martin, thank you for being here with us. I want to now focus on the top two candidates. Of course, Mark Carney, who in all of the polls that we've seen and displayed in this programme is leading only just, and Pierre Poilievre, who was the man who many thought was going to be the next Prime Minister of Canada. Martin, what sets these two leaders apart and what in their campaigns have been different from one another?
So actually this is a very unusual outcome because the Conservatives were having a great advantage at the time that Trump was putting in charge and he got his new administration. I think one of the reasons why conservatives lost a lot is because of Trump's actions. I think the Trump effect on this, on all of his foreign policies regarding trade, regarding his relationships with his neighbors, I think this affected a lot to this democratic contest. And I also think that the difference between these two parties, the liberal and the conservative party, is very, very tight. I mean, this is a surprise. Everything can happen today, even though all the polls are telling us that the liberals are going to win. Everything can happen because it's a very tight competition. I think the difference between these two parties is that the liberals are focusing on environmental issues and also on being the ones who are going to protect the cuts of the budgets in either in education or in health, while the Conservative Party, they're focusing on the basically on the farmers, on the rural areas, and also on the crisis of the housing. We need to remember Canada is now facing a very huge problem with housing and price of living, which is pretty much crazy.
Yes, absolutely, Martin. Thank you for raising those points. Just to give our audience a bit of an update, I mentioned earlier the early polling. That's over 7 million people casting early votes, and that's around a quarter of those eligible to vote. So that gives you a clear understanding that the turnout this year we expect to be high. Martin, amid global uncertainty, what could Canada's role be after this election in the ongoing global trade tensions, but also looking at conflicts that are happening across the world as well? We know Canada has been at key discussions involving the Russia-Ukraine war.
Well, I think the outcome can really be very different. For example, within trading with the US, I think if the Conservatives win, they will try to overcome this Trump issue with the tariffs, and Trump will face a very big opponent because usually conservatives tend to have taught responses to these economical decisions. On the other hand, if the liberals win, I think this will be a brand new type of liberalism, because we need to remember Mark Carney wanted to distance himself a little bit from Trudeau because he wanted to fix in certain kind of way how Trudeau's administration handled the pandemic, which was very criticized by the public opinion. I think Mark Carney, if he wins, he will try to be a singular and a completely different leader than Trudeau. He will not try to follow him, but he will try to distance himself and try to be a new type of leader.
Yes, Martin, of course, in Canada, in recent days, we're just off the back of the tragic Vancouver car ramming attack that has seen the death of 11 people. Potentially, that number may rise given that many people are currently in a critical condition. We've heard, of course, these election hopefuls speaking on this matter. Do you think that this attack, this car ramming incident, may have an impact on voters, or will it be in people's minds as they're voting on potential topics?
Of course, there are several issues and topics that arise. For example, criminality, security, how security will be enforced, immigration too. So all of these issues have a huge impact. However, the impact, to my surprise, was not that big, because usually right-wing governments or conservative governments tend to be more strict within immigration and security issues. And surprisingly, liberals are taking the advantage right now with a tight difference, but none the way, they are leading the polls. So I think this issue can have a huge impact. However, it did not have enough impact to have a shift on the trend.
Yes, Martin, we are coming towards the end of the programme. I do want to look at the role of other parties in these elections. We have seen that the NDP have often played kingmaker. The Liberals have been in power for over a decade and they've needed the NDP in previous elections. Do you think that this is just a two-horse race, or could another party come in and play a part in the result?
I think that the trend is already on his way. I don't think any other third party will do any difference. I think following the history of Canada, these two parties have been the major powers, and the other independent parties are not that relevant, to be honest. But I think it's a very tight race, and maybe if we put the Quebec party, if we analyze the Quebec party, they will be more tending to support the Conservatives at this time, I think, but it's not going to be a huge impact, in my opinion.
Absolutely. Martin, we are coming to the end of the programme. Before we leave, I would like a prediction from you. What do you think the outcome of this election will be? And at around this time tomorrow, who will be the Prime Minister incumbent in Canada?
So this is a very difficult question because, as I said, the difference between the two parties are very, very little, like very little. But if we follow the trends right now, I think Mark Carney will be the next Prime Minister. But everything can happen because this is a very tight competition. It's not as usual.
Yes, Martin Sa-Arrayas, thank you ever so much for joining us and providing your opinion there on this election. As all of our guests have said, this is going down to the wire. As polls continue to open in Canada, there's one place you want to be for all of the updates and coverage, and that is NewsX World. Stay with us here where we'll bring you all of those updates as Canada heads to the polls and a new Prime Minister will be announced.